I asked if that's an introduction. Bob, thank you very much. And let me thank all of you for coming out today. I look forward to the next hour of our discussion, mutual discussion, hearing some of your concerns, hearing some of my perspectives. As many of you know, I've been over to Iraq 3 times. I've met with most of the leaders in the region, from Assad in Syria to Signore in Lebanon, Mubarak in Egypt, to King Abdullah. Gotten their perspectives on it. But the most important perspective from my concern is right here in the 11th District. We've lost 16 citizens from the 11th District over in Iraq. In each case, I try to get by and see the family, talk to them, hear their concerns as well. It puts a human face on what's going on abroad. And I think more importantly, in a democracy, it's essential to discuss critical issues openly, often. And I'm happy to say I sat down with John last month. We had a good discussion in our office, sat down with many of you in smaller groups. Many of you have been to my town meetings. As you know, I do 7 a year, where we talk about a wide array of items. And when I got the opportunity to come out and focus a discussion on this war with concerned citizens, I thought it would be a great opportunity to just share ideas and make me a little smarter maybe, and we can both learn from each other. We may not agree on everything, but I don't think anybody can argue we're not going to be better for the discussion going back and forth and the perspectives we share. The Iraq Summer Campaign and the Citizens Against Escalation organization support on their website a responsible redeployment of American forces. And I think it's hard to disagree with that goal. I certainly share that goal, and I think I would hope a majority of members of the House of Representatives on both sides of the aisle would share that goal. Not surprisingly, the devil becomes in the details. How do we best effectuate that? How do we move toward that? As many of you know, I was one of 17 Republicans in the House who voted against the surge because I was convinced and remain convinced that we're never going to be able to just fight our way out of Iraq. It's a much more complex equation than that. Once Saddam fell, it wasn't a military problem we faced. It was much a political problem that the Iraqis have to solve for themselves, and they've been very slow to step up to the plate. You've seen, I think, everybody involved in this to talk about Maliki and how he is not, and his government has not been able to step up. And as the Americans step forward and put our lives and our resources on the line, and the Iraqis not stepping up, it creates, I think, a number of difficulties for any kind of long-term solution. I've traditionally opposed withdrawal deadlines because I think it gives the other side a very free advantage in surrendering a tactical flexibility that I think commanders on the ground need to protect our troops. And I think that's generally the most responsible position. So we're struggling with what do you do next in Iraq? How can we bring other instruments of national power to bear in Iraq? Regional diplomacy, something that needs to be explored even further. A precipitous withdrawal, in my opinion, would lead to a regional problem that would send, and it already has sent, 2 million Sunnis out of the country that can destabilize other nations around there and create regional conflicts that can haunt us for a long time. Economic policy. The unemployment rate in Iraq remains very, very high. Our intelligence, which I think still isn't where we would like to have it. To help the Iraqis forge a viable civic consensus and just stop turning on each other. I've supported legislative efforts to pursue the recommendations of the Iraqi Study Group, the Baker-Hamilton report, to engage Iraq's neighbors, to build civic institutions, and to rebuild infrastructure. And by the way, that calls for a redeployment, as you know, along the lines that this committee has suggested. But again, there aren't any easy answers and easy solutions, and no one holds any moral high ground in the debate, in my judgment. Congress has many tools at its disposal to change our policy in Iraq, the power of the purse being first and foremost among them. The current Congress has chosen not to wield that authority. It will be coming up again in September. Congress has the authority to withhold funds or to put conditions on those funds as they step forward. What has happened in the past is as the administration has asked for money, leadership in both houses has caved and has gone ahead and sent the money unfettered. But Congress, in my opinion, legal authority, has the authority not just to withhold, but to put conditions on how that money is spent. And we'll be facing that as we come forward in September. When I chaired the Government Committee in the House, we exposed chronic pay errors inflicted on deploying National Guard troops as people moved off state payrolls and onto federal payrolls. This was a government that was not ready for prime time. 90% of Guardsmen who were doing a bulk of the fighting were not paid properly. Some of them threatened to have their houses foreclosed on, their cars foreclosed on, their families back home that they abandoned. We held hearings on that to try to rectify that issues. In fact, some of them that were overpaid when they came back, the government went ahead and sued them. But we changed that, and we changed those policies, trying to bring our systems into the 21st century. We had the same problem with medical care. As they rotated off of the active duty pay onto guard and reserve status, many people fell through the cracks. And we saw some of the ramifications of that and some of the manifestations of that over at Walter Reed. We held hearings on that, exposing those as well. We got the Pentagon to try to correct some of its sloppy contracting practices. We did 4 hearings when I was chairman on contracting and rot, in fact, including one day of just whistleblowers from some of the contractors over there talking about some of the contractual inequities that were occurring over there and how taxpayer dollars were spent. And this year, I've joined a bipartisan effort to examine the mistakes made by the Army after the death of Corporal Pat Tillman, something that is an American tragedy and that we're trying to get to the bottom of. As we go forward, Congress has an essential and constructive role to play in shaping and guiding our policies in Iraq. I'm just one member, but I think that I want to share the discussion with you today as we talk about some of the options before us. Here's some of your views and get reaction on that. I look forward to a productive dialogue today, and I thank you very much for inviting me here today and look forward to a constructive discussion. Thank you.